Means if he visualized 1800, let's say France, Paris, France, 1800 on a street corner, his mind had a virtual image, a virtual reality image created of that street corner in Paris in 1800. And if they picked that out, it would make a connection, first energetic and then physical, to that point in France in 1800.
Would it occur?
It would occur.
In a limited space, in wherever it chooses to? Is it controllable in terms of where it occurs?
Whatever he could concentrate on, that's how tightly they could control it. And they actually,
so you could make it appear at a specific place?
Yes.
Okay.
They used the master 1923.
You're talking about the holodeck on the, on the Enterprise.
But more advanced.
Yeah.
Because the holodeck would not actually send you to 1800.
Yeah.
Now physically it would recreate 1800. You'd be walking into a virtual reality.
Wow.
The Duncan's mind would create the holodeck function that the computers on the Star Trek created. Then the big transmitter would actually make it physical and real. It was first started out that they could view it and display it on a TV screen. Then once they got where they wanted, then they could record it, extend it, and they could make an actual opening from the present to whatever time they're
So it's not creating anything, it's just realizing what's there already.
Sure.
Making an attachment
to it. So in a sense, all time is occurring at the same time as what
well said.
The result of that experiment.
Of course, to make a long story short, they then cleared everybody off the base, brought in a super elite secret group to do the time research. That's when they're starting to muck around and monkey with time itself. Of course, we can go into umpteen billion different stories here of what they could have done and what they did. So, then of course, at the end of the project, in August 12, 1983, they made the connections. Slightly earlier, the two guys came from 43 to 83. The project's locked up. They created this huge vortex between 83 and 43. It was decided maybe early July, late July, early August of 1983, that what was being done out at Montauk was not for the best. Some people were starting to get cold feet. They were starting to get scared, to be honest with you. There was meetings held privately among the group.
Because the technologies were so advanced that none of the interim...
This group was monkeying around with time. They could go back and change the life of Christ if they wanted. It was getting very concerning, very scary. After a number of meetings privately between the people inside, not the management of Montauk, but the workers, it was decided this project had to crash.
And who made that decision?
I don't know for sure. I don't know who made it. What's decided? The project had to crash. We were going to bring down the project by putting into Duncan a command that when we said the time is now, to bring up into his conscious mind a monster from the subconscious. A Bigfoot, essentially. So, August 12th, 1983, he went into the chair, turned on, he was connecting, we don't even know where he was connecting to at that point, what space and time. But along about 4 in the afternoon, I believe it was myself, I went into the chair room, opened up the mic into the chair room and said, the time is now, the time is now. At that point, Duncan cleared out the virtual he had already created and brought up this monster from his subconscious. And of course, it became physical and real, and we call it Junior. It started to stomp around. It was angry. It was mad. It was hungry. It was frightened. It brought out of his subconscious mind. Next thing you know, he's in an area he's not familiar with. He's very mean and nasty. He's making a lot of noise, smashing things. And at that point, it was decided by the project director the project had to be stopped. We went down to the power station and pulled the switches to the radar building. Only thing is, nothing happened. It didn't stop. So my next thought is, holy Moses, the Navy and Air Force techs must have got the wiring underground all messed up. So it was decided, okay, we didn't want to go pull the switches because we weren't sure what was going to happen. So we decided I put on a set of acetylene tanks, a cutting torch. small torch you can wear on your back. And I went into the transformer yard, the substation, next to the transmitter building, and I cut the wires coming up out of the ground with the torch. And I had insulation and such so I wouldn't get shocked. And all the lights went on in the base. That damn transmitter kept running. So then I was saying to Jack, that's the base, the head of the project, you going to go in there? He said, no, you're going to go in there. I said, no, you're going to go in there. None of us wanted to go inside the building. Because there's all sorts of discharge, there's all sorts of wild stuff going on inside the building at that point. You could open the door, look in, and it looked like St. Elmo's fire everywhere, and there were glowing masses on the, even the first floor. So finally, I don't remember what it was, at gunpoint or whatever, I was, shall we say, persuaded to go in and start taking it down inside the building. So I first went and pulled the wiring out that went up to the transmitter. Because I thought maybe the wiring is still messed up and I didn't cut the actual line. So I knew this box up behind the main panel, power panel, had the 3-phase 440 or 1600 that went up to the drivers. We knew once we got the drivers down, the amplifiers down below, which you couldn't get anywhere near, was shut down. They were primed, they were set, so that if the input signal stopped to those amplifiers for more than 10 seconds, they just shut off entirely, powered down, and was ready to have the water pumped out and that sort of thing. I pulled those wires out. The lights went out in the building, but I could still hear everything humming upstairs. So I say, oh, these damn techs, they don't know what the hell they're doing. The electricians have messed up everything. Now I gotta go upstairs. So I'm climbing up through the muck and mire and the discharge and the alternate realities and all that nonsense. Get up to the first transmitter floor, and I start trying to shut stuff off, shut down. I can't even touch the consoles. I get burned when I touch the consoles. So I decide, okay, upstairs is the master power control for the 2 transmitters. The first and second transmitter floor. So I said, okay, I'm going to go up to the second floor and I'm going to cut that whole master power thing apart. I cut it apart. It was still running, but now you could hear everything was out of sequence, out of phase. It was making funny growling noises. I actually had to go into the amplitron rooms and cut the waveguides apart, go into the amplitron. To this day, you can see torch marks where the power control switches were, and you can see torch marks in the amplitron's room by the amplitron. And at that point, when I cut the amplitrons apart, everything stopped humming. The discharging reduced, and I knew, okay, we finally shut this goddamn thing off. And I went out. Of course, most of the people were gone. Junior was 30 foot tall or 10 foot tall, depending upon how much brown mush you had in your pants. And by then, most everybody had gone AWOL, or run out, run for their life. And there was maybe myself and 2 others, so we fled. And I went through debriefing. They played the time wraparound number, which, is a long story, so I wouldn't remember in those. They made sure I didn't remember what I did. I actually had worked 2 jobs. But, unless you're really interested. But essentially, he was debriefed, released back into the public. I was debriefed, released back into the public, and went on about our regular normal lives. And that's the end of the story. So now you can go into questions.
Were you? I mean, when you were debriefed, were you required to an oath of silence? No, because you were never in the military.
No. Yeah. They did this through mind control means. Both Duncan and I were debriefed through mind control means. We were just made to forget it.
And did you?
I did until I started to work with a time transducer myself and had time currents flowing through me. Once I had the time currents flowing through me, I passed out up on the roof. When I came back, all of a sudden I started to remember everything. Up on the roof of this building is an antenna, very similar, a small edition of what they build out at Montauk for the main time antenna. We call it Delta T antenna, or Delta Time. It's 3 loops built on the Delta, an X, a Y, and a Z. And mathematically you can do wild things if you drive all 3 loops correctly. You can actually create time vortexes, time distortions and such if you know how to do it. You also have to have a electric field antenna above the delta T.